Hello, hello, hello. It's time to get into firms in GCSE economics, so let's get into it. So in this chapter, we're going to try to get through a lot of things. Today, though, we're going to mostly look at different types of firms, hopefully with a little bit of economies of scale, and we're going to look at growth a little bit. The other stuff's going to come later in the syllabus. Now, types of firms. As you can see from this picture, there are 6 types we're going to look at today. Let's get started on the first, sole trader. Do you have any idea what that is?
But what exactly is a sole trader, and what are the pros and cons of being a sole trader? Well, a sole trader is a self-employed person who runs their own business. For example, a freelance graphic designer who operates as a sole trader instead of a company, partnership, or other legal structure. While a sole trader is often the only person involved in the business, they can employ other people if they want to. So you can use the sole trader structure even if you won't be the only person working in your business.
Okay, so we know it's an individual that starts their own business. They're the most common in the world. It's one person that owns and runs it. They can employ people, however, but it's one individual owner. It's relatively easy to set up. I think it's about £14 in the UK to set up these days. And that £14 is for the registration purposes. So, what are the pros and cons of setting up a business by yourself? This is the type of economics work that's very similar to business studies. There's not a lot of crossover, but in this particular subject there is. So, relatively easy to set up. You have to register the organisation for a low price, in the UK at least. The owner is their own boss. They have complete freedom of choice and decision making. If there's a profit made, they get 100% of the profit, after tax of course. And then it's their own business, so they're motivated to push and drive their own business to success. And like I said, they got free choice. And it's not like a public company where they have to share their goals, dreams, ambitions, profits, depreciation, all their financial information. They can remain relatively private with it, although some disclosures are necessary. So the cons of this then, of course there are a lot. Who can you discuss problems with when your business is going down? You have unlimited liability, and this is the biggest issue of a sole trader. If your business fails because it is your business, you are registered to this business, and you've borrowed a lot of money, you might lose your entire house, your entire savings to pay off the debts. You are not a separate legal identity from your business. As you're the only individual, you might have limited funds to start the business. That's not always the case, but it might mean you have less resources and groups. It might require you to work long hours to get the business off the ground. And you've only got one person, you, not a specialist, unless of course you hire some, so this can cause some barriers down the line. And of course, economies of scale. You're not going to grow that big if you're just one person. So basically, this is an economies of scale graph that I like to use in class. We can see the average cost of a product is here, and the output is here on this axis. So all it shows is as a company gets larger, the average cost of producing stuff, let's say it's toothbrushes, the average cost of producing a toothbrush goes down as they employ better equipment, people have more skills, they can buy resources for a cheaper price as they get bigger, but eventually diseconomies of scale kick in where average costs start to go up with mismanagement of funds and other problems with communication in large organizations. So in the early stages, it might be hard for an individual to get down this curve to have these lower cost benefits. Next is a partnership. So in England, this is considered to be between 2 and 20 people. It requires a deed of partnership to sign up for it. And you're basically agreeing the terms of ownership. I might put in a smaller amount than the rest, but they benefit from my expertise, and therefore I might own a larger percentage of the business. So you can say Tom invested 50,000 and got 35% of the business. This is usually how it starts up. And when the profits come out, Tom's the one that gets 35% based on his ownership. Lovely. Unless the other 65% decides to not give Tom a salary. Here's a little video. It appears YouTube's having issues playing the video. It thinks I'm a bot. Who knows, it could be right. So, most important part of the video, partnership does not have a separate legal status. So again, like a sole trader, if the partnership loses money, everyone involved can lose money. So can you think of any benefits of this? Here are some. They might have access to more capital at the start because more people are bringing more money to the table. You can split the skills and the responsibility among the members. So you can divide the expertise, which is pretty useful. Especially if you've got like an accountant and a bricklayer. The accountant can do the financial stuff and the customer retention. The bricklayer can do the actual work. Also, you have arguments in partnerships all the time. People agree, disagree, and generally ownership of the business counts here, percentage ownership. Now, Exercise. Pause the video, have a look at this, and have a think whether Jamie and Alex would make a good team together. Alright, what do you think? Well, among my students, it was actually a mixed bag. Some think they should go off on their own and do sole traders, and some think that they should have become a partnership. I personally like the idea of a sole trader because I think in the sphere of pictures, if you're a really good picture taker and you know how to upload them to websites, it will do the marketing for itself. However, some other students believe going into partnership with Jamie mitigates the risk a little bit. They both can add money to it, and Jamie's skills might be able to cause exponential growth for Alex's photography. Plus, it's a shared passion that they have. So I got them to write down some benefits and negatives of this situation. So here are some pros for them starting a partnership. They have complementary skills with the marketing and picture taking, shared responsibility if the business fails. Depending on the type of company they have could have a limited company, which would be separate legal identity to mitigate their risks. And joint decision making can really help flesh out ideas. But on the other hand, it can cause conflicts. And with the liability, it can be a positive in the sense that if you're $100,000 in debt, you might share it 50-50. But what if one person's responsible for all that debt and the other didn't do anything wrong? Difficult, right? I've seen friendships break over much smaller things, I can tell you that. What about arguments over profit sharing? Tough one in a partnership. All right, what if they go out on their own and become sole traders? Each person has complete control. More simple to set up, and all the profits go directly to the individual, implying that that is a reward for the effort, energy, time that they put into it, their entrepreneurial skill set. Cons. The great picture taker Alex might have struggles with marketing and sales, and Jamie might struggle with the picture taking. So maybe they can't work individually. Maybe they need each other. I mean, if you do it individually, you're liable for all your problems in the same way that you can benefit from all of your profits if you do well. And it can be tricky managing all areas of the business by yourself. So let's move on. Next is a private limited company. Look at that Hollywood smile. You don't see that every day, do you? Private limited companies. These companies, because they're registered as limited, as you can see, they have separate legal identities. I put this in bold because it's massive. The company now is separate, meaning if the company fails and declares bankruptcy, it only loses the money that you've put into it. That's it. Your house is secure. And also, you're able to sell shares to your friends, not on the stock market, just to your friends and family and associates. So, some benefits of this. You can sell shares. Basically, selling shares means here is 1% of the business, give me $100,000. You sell parts of the business in order to get money, and you can then use that money to grow the business. As I said before, the most key important point here, separate legal identity to mitigate risk. If people are good at restricting share distribution, they can still keep control. But if they sell 51% of their shares, boom, that's it. The 51% shareholder can kick them out. There's been loads of cases in the past of company ABC owning 17%, 17%, 17%, then pooling together and kicking out the original founder and doing what they want with organizations. Very smart. There's a pose if I've ever seen one. Cons. There can be a lot of legal formalities when you're forming a private company. It can also be difficult to establish. It's not as easy as a sole trader with the paperwork. Like I said, you can't sell shares on the stock exchange. And you must have consent with people in the organization before you sell further shares. Well, other shareholders. When registered in this form, company data must be published. Accounts are visible online on a website in the UK called Company's House. Whenever I decide to invest in a company or I'm interested in using a company, I always look up the financial data first on Company's House. I think it's really important. It's free to access. All right, so we looked at private limited. Now let's look at the big boys, public limited. These guys are actually on the stock exchange and they can sell shares to the public. It's really hard to do this though. They have to jump through so many hoops. They have to apply for a listing. They have to pay a lot of money. They have to speak to the right people. And once they get on the stock exchange, they have to give annual meetings. They have to provide yearly company reports showing their earnings, showing their profit ratios, showing their projections for the future. Big stuff. So the company is permanently under a microscope and has to pay money for staff to create these items. Here's an example of Tesla when they first came on the stock exchange.
Elon faces his final challenge, selling Tesla to Wall Street. The omens are not good. The Nasdaq is down 2%.
The interesting thing about this is when your company tries to go on the stock exchange, you might, let's say, try to sell 50,000 shares, 50% of your company. And you might say to everybody, oh, we think these 50,000 shares are worth $5 each, 2.5 million. But the reality is you don't know. You don't know what the value of these shares are going to be until it's on the stock exchange. And that's when it's a perfect market for demand and supply. You don't know who's going to buy them. You don't know how much of it's going to be bought. If no one wants to buy it, what happens to the price? It goes down. If lots of people want to buy it, what happens to the price? It goes up. So it's really difficult to match your expectations with reality when you put your shares on the stock exchange for the first time. It's an incredibly nervous time for companies because they don't know the true valuation of their company until it's on the market.
And falling.
Everybody's talking about one of the most hyped IPOs in recent memory, Tesla Motors. It sold 1,063 cars. I myself have sold 1,063 cars. You don't want to own this stock. You shouldn't even rent the darn thing.
Well, big losses on Wall Street today, as we've been reporting, and it's just the same for just about any U.S. stock, except one, Tesla Motors.
It is up. It priced above the range, sold 20% more stock than it thought it would, and it is still up.
Shares of the electric car maker Tesla Motors are up.
So we can see they were successful. They sold 20% more than projected. And look at the value shoot up. So it was a very happy day for Tesla because it implies the public have confidence in the company and they believe it will do well. All right, moving forward. So pros then. There's a separate legal identity again, meaning that if the business fails, you only lose what shares you've bought in the business. It will continue when people in the organization pass away. Think about Coca-Cola lasting for hundreds of years. If they sell shares on the stock market, there's an opportunity to sell to anyone in the world and they can continually raise capital. Shares can easily be transferred between owners because it's all online on the stock exchange. And being on the stock exchanges leads to a higher status, which will attract many more customers. Problems though, as I said, there are quite a few. So many legal formalities to do to stay on the stock exchange. You got to publish your accounts every year, say what you're going to do. Let people and competitors know what's going on in your business. You've really got to be on top. It's an expensive game selling shares. You might also have to pay dividends yearly to shareholders to encourage people to buy shares. A dividend is just a percentage of the share value that companies give out to shareholders. Again, owners, if they're not smart, they can lose 51% of their company. It might be 7 or 8 different companies with different names buying these shares, but they might all secretly be owned by one person, and that person can easily push out the entire original team if they want, if they have the 51% ownership. And they have to have that annual general meeting, like I said, and publish their reports. And here's a little table that I give to students to kind of have a reference for. Sole traders, partnerships, limited companies. You can pause the screen and have a look at this. Right, moving forward, cooperatives. This comes up a little bit. We don't need to have too much information on it. It's just a different kind of structure. These organizations work together to buy in bulk, and it's not based on how much money you have invested in the cooperative. You all have an equal share. There's literally a store in the UK called Co-op, and it's all over the country. There's an equal share of profits, and it's generally just a different managerial and profit share structure to the previous structures we've looked at. Next, the last one, public corporation or state-owned enterprise or government-run company. It's quite annoying, right? Because a PLC, a public limited company, has the same starting word, which frustrates a lot of students and it confuses a lot of students. But a public limited company is different to a public company. Public means for the public, which means it's a government company, okay? And public limited is a company that is literally registered as a limited business, but is also on the stock exchange. So, a state-owned enterprise or a public corporation. These are generally large government businesses, and large governments really like to protect key industries in a country. Think about gas, think about oil, think about electricity, think about internet infrastructure, think about water. Governments love to protect the key industries in any country. So, quick question, can you think of any of the key SOEs in your country? These are some of the key SOEs in China. We've mostly got oil groups, banks. The government have a key interest in China in regulating banks. Look, oil, railways, All key infrastructure to helping an economy thrive. The thing is, though, this is kind of interesting, though, for China, because actually in most countries, banks are private. But in these cases, the government has a really tight control over the banks, beyond a central bank's general reach. So, pros of this situation. There's hardly ever going to be bankruptcy if your government supplies water to households. It doesn't matter if it's losing money. Every household needs clean water, good electricity. Well, they can easily repay debts because the government are the ones that create the money to pay the debt. Because it's key industries, they're really important, and there's an argument they should be protected by the government and produced and provided by the government. And it's more about social responsibility than making profit. Every child should be educated, therefore the government makes schools. Makes sense, right? It's not about profit sometimes. It's not a private company, which leads to some of the problems. Because it's not about profit, they're no way near as efficient as private companies. Because they're not motivated by profit, this lack of efficiency is very clear, and The Economist writes about it a lot. Here's a really good graph that shows a return on assets. We can see that private organizations in the same industries make a much larger profit than state-controlled firms, and this gap widened significantly from 2009 onwards after the financial crisis. There is a side note of joint ventures. This is just where two companies decide to work on a project together. They can share the costs, they can pool their knowledge, share the risks. Profits have to be shared, disagreements might occur, and they might have different ideas about how to run it. I'm just putting this in here quickly just in case it popped up in the exam. Right, moving forward. We've done all 6 of those organizations now. So, in your head, it might be worthwhile to jot these down on a piece of paper and just remember the advantages and disadvantages to each one. That way you'll be fully clued in for your exams. And the final part of today is about small firms. So here's a scenario for you. Why can Sarah's small firm survive even though she has stiff competition? Give yourself a minute to read that. Right, this is a common exam question, okay? And there are lots of reasons. The first reason, as it states in the paragraph, she's got unique products. They're different to other products. They might be better in quality in some way. If you've been around a while and you have repeat customers, that loyalty brings in consistent profits. What if it's a really unique market that people haven't tackled yet? There might be a really specific type of bread that people like that she makes that no one else makes. And because she's small, she can adapt to customer needs if they keep asking for the same stuff. So there's lots of reasons why she'll survive next to big businesses. There are other reasons why small businesses can survive in society. Sometimes they're just like a flea on a bigger animal. It's not the best analogy, but think about a parcel delivery service that does 1-hour deliveries from the Amazon warehouse. People might pay extra for that special service. So they are fully dependent on the large organization that is Amazon surviving. What if the product they sell is highly inelastic in demand? Think about cigarettes or vapes. People need their fix. If you're small, you can micromanage a lot and avoid diseconomies of scale. You might not ever hit the major economies of scale, but you can certainly avoid the diseconomies. And smaller businesses might not even want to grow. Maybe they've got enough customers and they're quite content, as is stated here. And this is an important one, maintaining quality control over the good or service. If you run a restaurant that makes really nice cakes and you have really high standards, and then you consider opening a second one across town, you might be really concerned about the standards dropping, especially when you're not there, that it might cause problems. So you might just be happy with your own restaurant that has a high standards, high quality, and that's enough for you, especially if it's making a decent profit. And like I said, small firms are flexible and adaptable, and they can survive in these markets. All right, that's it from me. Make sure you're clued into these 6 types of businesses. If you want any private lessons, just check the link down below. Have a great day, and I'll see you all again.